This is What Do You Bring to the Table, a series made by youth for youth that aims to explore the many career paths available within our Canadian food systems. By interviewing industry leaders across the country, we get a first-hand look at the various career opportunities available to the next generation, with a particular focus on equity and sustainability. We want to thank the Gay Lea Foundation and the Ontario Trillium Foundation for their generosity in supporting this project. Please visit our website www.seeds.ca/schoolfoodgardens and sign up for our free monthly e-newsletter to stay involved. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Links to those are on our website. If you like what we are doing, please drop a like, review, or comment. Or if you have the means to, contribute with a monetary donation through our website. Thanks for listening. This is episode 3, Isabella and Hilda.
My name is Isabella, and I'm an interviewer with CSIP Diversity, here with Miss Hilda Nuri today. Hilda, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I am an urban agriculture manager at the Stop Community Food Center. And at the Stop, we have 3 different sites, and the one I oversee is our Green Barn site at Witchwood Barns. And there we have a greenhouse and a couple community gardens and a farmer's market every week. So I support those programs there. Yeah.
It's wonderful. My first question I'd like to ask you today is, what made you want to work in agriculture?
Yeah, so I did not grow up wanting to work in agriculture, but actually, like when I was a teenager, I think I was inspired by my family back home to pursue education in agriculture. Not because they studied it or anything, but because every summer I would go back to Iran, where my extended family is from, and everyone there would have a garden, and just food was so much more flavorful and growing close to home. And my family there had like an orchard and a small farm outside the city, and I just remember those experiences being really meaningful to me when they would share what they were growing and show me around, and getting to harvest and eat the food from there. And then I came back home and I switched what I was studying in university, and I pursued studies in agricultural science at the University of Guelph. And then from there, I got experience working on a farm. And then I did a master's in immigration studies and looking at the interaction of immigrants and with food. And ever since then, I've been really obsessed with food and agriculture and growing food. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Wow, it's really cool that your spark kind of came from visiting Iran and your family there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think they just had a different relationship with food, where they didn't shop at like big box grocery stores, or that just doesn't exist there. So we're a lot more that like chain between like where our food comes from and how we get our food is a lot shorter there. So seeing that, yeah, really inspired me.
Yeah, totally. What is the toughest and most rewarding aspect of your job as an urban agriculture manager?
I guess being able to do everything we want to do within like the resources and staff that we have. So right now I manage a team of about 12 people, and it's a big team, and we run so many programs, and especially during the months of like the growing season, we're super busy. And because everyone is so passionate in what they do, we always have a lot of ideas of where we could take our work or what else we can offer. But that becomes paired with like trying not to burn out or overextend ourselves. Yeah, I guess that's, yeah, just like saying no to things and making sure people aren't overworked in what they do, and also being able to like meet the needs of people in the community and what they want to see out of our space and the work that we do. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, and especially with COVID too, that must be really tough to meet all the needs of your employees like that.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully during COVID, we were still able to run our outdoor gardening programs because they were outdoors and it was still safe to be outside together with safe distance. So that was really special and I feel like meaningful for a lot of people to be able to be in a community garden space and outdoor space during a time where isolation was really hard on folks. And people were reminded how important it was to be connected to food and having a desire to be connected to that process. I think the pandemic really reminded everyone of that. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about the green barn earlier that you work at. I was wondering if you could explain a bit how the green barn's compost demonstration works.
Yeah, so the green barn is, as I mentioned, it's our greenhouse, and we have a commercial kitchen and kind of like an indoor shared space where meetings and workshops and programs happen, and then an outdoor courtyard and 2 community garden spaces. And then we have a couple other community garden spaces that are off-site too. But behind our greenhouse, we have like a 200 square foot area where it's our compost demonstration space. And that is where we process our compost and we process our organics that come out of when programs and different chefs use our kitchen. So their kitchen scraps all get incorporated into the compost bins that we have in this space. And we often also take green waste from our vendors, from our farmers market. So things like, the tops of their carrots or like greens that are going bad or coffee grinds, they can dump it in our compost bins too. And then we have a sort of like 3-bin compost system, but it's actually 4 bins. So it's like 4 giant wood bins that you can physically like get into and turn the compost piles there. And then from there, they get moved on to like each successive bin when they need to be turned. And we recently hired a compost facilitator because we recognize that our space has a lot of capacity to produce compost, but we need someone dedicated to that space to make it happen efficiently. But for years, our compost area has been producing like hundreds of pounds of compost that gets integrated into our community gardens and into the soil mixes that we make to grow seedlings in our greenhouse. And it produces compost really, really well. But you just have to make sure that compost is like a cooking recipe. Like it has to be 50% greens and 50% browns, and has to reach the perfect temperature and be aerated and have the right amount of moisture to be able to break down the materials in there and get rid of like dangerous pathogens. And it has to be like turned and maintained and monitored. But it's a really amazing process when you do produce good compost out of there.
I had no idea there's such a process behind it, and it's amazing that you try not to waste anything and bring it back to nature. And then
Yeah, it's a real cyclical system, like using the food scraps from our kitchen programs, um, incorporating them into our compost, and then using that compost product back into the gardens where food will grow. Yeah. Mhm.
Something that I think a lot of people must wonder about is seafood inflation in Canada has reached about 10% this year. And staples like meat, fruit, and vegetables, flour too, they rose around like 30%, which I think affected a lot of people. But as someone in the food industry, how has rapid food inflation affected the stop?
Yeah, it's hugely affected us, and we've noticed the increase in prices and inflation because our costs have been higher, and we've seen more people come to our food bank. So, our two other sites offer a meal program, and one of them also is a food bank. And we offer a free meal every day, sometimes even twice a day. So we purchase a lot of food, and we try to purchase it locally and ethically when we can. And we've just seen those prices skyrocket, and things have costed us like 30% more than they usually have, and it's really affected our budget. And because we really want to prioritize offering these emergency um, food programs, we've had to kind of tighten budgets, and it's affected like the rest of the organization, and how we can spend money and how we can still afford to run these programs. And we've also, yes, seen more people come to our meal program and come to our food bank to get food because they just can't afford enough food on their own. So yeah, it's made a huge impact for us, especially in the past year.
Wow, it's terrifying, but it's so nice that you try to help those people, like even with such the rise of food and the cost of
Mhm.
food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I think that almost goes hand in hand with food inflation is global warming, because I think it also must affect food a lot, right? So, how do you think global warming has affected the Green Barn's harvest?
Yeah, I think that we are just more aware of our work and how it is connected to trying to reduce the effects of global warming. Like um, in our compost demonstrations at workshops, we try to integrate an understanding of global warming and its effects, and how by composting you can reduce the effects of global warming because it's less going into less like garbage and waste going into the landfill, and getting incorporated back into growing food. Also just noticing like the weather changing and increased heat, and increased extreme weather um, affects how we can grow things. And I mean, it's fine for a community garden, and it's a lot more of a controlled situation, but I think that's something that's been affecting farmers who grow food in a larger scale and are finding it increasingly hard to grow food in such extreme weather conditions. Um, yeah.
Yeah, on the Stop's website, I actually saw that the Green Barn is trying to use sustainable food production to help the environment because of global warming. And I was wondering, what are some challenges that come with using a non-polluting method of food production?
Yeah, so at the stop, we grow all of our food organically, and we don't use pesticides, and everything is grown by hand, so we don't use machines or anything. And that's possible because we grow on a smaller scale, but some of our gardens are 8,000 square feet large, so they're quite big, and we use the help and support of a lot of volunteers and participants who can make food growing possible, but we also do have to get very creative in how to keep growing our food while using organic practices. So that means like crop rotation, so like switching up where you plant certain crops every year in your garden to avoid the same pests from or diseases from affecting your plants. Or in our greenhouse, we use a mix of beneficial insects that eat the insects that we don't want, that ruin the plants, like aphids and whiteflies and stuff like that. And we've gotten really good at creating soil recipes that use a lot of different nutrients that make our plants really strong and resistant to a lot of disease and pests. So yeah, it's pushed us to use a lot of creative methods in how we grow, and trying to grow as much food locally so we don't depend on bringing food from external sources, which use like transportation and gas, and lead to worse effects in global warming.
Wow, that's really cool. And I hope a lot of other places can follow that example, because that really benefits the environment. And I really like that. On the website, it also said that the stop is moving away from philanthropy due to donor values and community-centric thinking. So could you explain a bit on your views on philanthropy and what you think about this?
Yeah, so recently in the past few years, the stop has shifted from how they usually fundraise and how nonprofits usually fundraise. And it's still a lot of nonprofits and are really dependent on like a capitalistic model of fundraising, where we depend on large corporations and companies and like government grants to be able to run our programs. And essentially that makes us have to follow the expectations and produce the results that these larger institutions require of us, because we're dependent on them for funding. And what we're trying to shift into is more individual funders. So a community-centric model where we're looking at the community and trying to diversify where we receive our funding, so we can be able to direct our work in terms of what the community wants to see, rather than these large entities. And we're not kind of like stifled by what they want to see and the numbers they want to see, but actually doing meaningful work that pays attention to the individual needs of the community. So it's a lot harder to fundraise this way. I think it's a lot more work to depend on more people for fundraising and more individuals. But I think it's a great model to try to shift towards. So we're kind of trying to move away from this the like systems of capitalism that usually govern nonprofits. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Like, yeah, the point of a nonprofit is to help the community, to help the people. So I think that's really beautiful what all of you guys are doing to move away from the large corporations. I think what kind of connects with the last question is, how do some of your own values align with the stop?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the principal values of the stop is just honoring equitable and dignified access to food, and trying to create opportunities for folks where they feel empowered in the food system. And that is definitely something I've always been passionate about and trying to bring into the spaces that I work. So really honoring the knowledge and the stories that folks already have about food. A lot of people have, like connections and stories from their homeland about food and what they want to grow and what they want to eat. So trying to make a space at the stop where they can celebrate that and share that with others. So giving, space in a community garden for people to grow the food that they want and have power over like a piece of land that they get to grow food on, and being given like resources in order to do this, because access to land is really hard to come by in a city. And then also, trying to promote a lot of dignity for folks that walk into our programs or a space as a participant or a volunteer. So just treating everyone like uniquely, and that everyone has their own story when they walk in to our space, and honoring that everyone has something to share, and not using kind of like a teacher student model where thinking that we know more than others, but making a space where people feel empowered enough to share with one another and having an exchange in knowledge.
Definitely. Wow. I think a great way to end us off is to ask, what are some ways people who don't work in the food industry, like everyday people, can help improve food security for the underprivileged that come to your food bank?
I mean, ways that you could directly help out the stop is one way. If you feel inspired by our work, there's many ways to support us, either by directly donating to us. That is the most meaningful way. It goes towards being able to keep our doors open and our programs running. And if that's not feasible for you, then volunteering. Our food bank and our meal programs and our garden programs and our events for our community always need volunteers. So you can find out that information through our website. And then just kind of everyday things that folks can do is trying to educate themselves about where their food comes from, about the diversity of food in Toronto, how we can support food access programs and more long-term solutions to food insecurity, like better income security and better social addressing like better social needs in the city, like housing and income and health, and also just like exploring and trying out new foods and like supporting small food businesses and like food entrepreneurs in the city. A lot of those tend to be immigrants. And I think that is a really amazing way for newcomers and immigrants in the country to share something with their new country, and also to make money, and we can support them through that way. So there's many things you can do.
Yeah, spreading the awareness about food security, that's really important that you said. I agree. Yeah, I think that's all. And thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to be here with me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for your thoughtful questions, and good luck with the rest of the project and interviews.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of What Do You Bring to the Table? See you again soon.